佢。喂，打個頭。
而家兩個咧喺度對，一個遊直劇都冇話知，想實埋啫，冇錯，一邊埋。
Hey guys, it's Will, it's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well. This is our first public YouTube video with my new camera. Well, it's a phone, but the phone has a camera on it. I say public YouTube video because I have recorded a Patreon exclusive video with the phone. I'm getting a lot. The reason I mentioned that is I'm getting a lot of glare like on my glasses. I'm still kind of the angle of the lens that is in this camera is very, very different than my last phone, and still trying to figure out like how to shoot with it to optimize the space and stuff like that. So you may be glaring off the glasses there, and I apologize for that. But what are we here to talk about today? It is an 88 films, Blu-ray release, Region A and Region B. It is a film that was released in 1983. It's a special year for me because that's the year I was born. The movie is Hong Kong. I absolutely loved this movie. A lot of people have talked to me about how they think it's a shame that the dramas that are being released by the labels, who are also releasing the action and martial arts films, aren't getting enough. Maybe enough is the wrong word. Aren't getting as much attention as the martial arts and action films. And I totally agree with that. It's a difficult predicament because these films are like, this movie is incredible. Like, this is a phenomenal film, like made at a very high level of like just world-class prestige, like award-winning drama filmmaking. It is a great movie. Their performances are freaking incredible. And I will get into the details on that in a second. It's interesting because a lot of people say they want to know more about these lesser-known films. They want to see them. They want to see genres outside of heroic bloodshed, martial arts, and stuff like that. And then, as is always the case with, I know less about like publications, you know, like the online reviewers for like the websites and stuff, but like with YouTubers, with people who do Instagram and other forms of social media, who really love these movies, appreciate them, put a lot of care into trying to promote them and stuff, the content never does as well as like the John Woo movies and stuff like that. So like everybody says they want them, but then it seems like people maybe don't actually want them, or like they think they do, but it's an interesting thing. And I would be interested in your comments on why that is down below. And I will agree, this is totally true. We live in very difficult times, and people are very busy, and people are struggling financially, and our jobs are very demanding, and we're all very, very tired at the end of the day. And sometimes we just want to sit down on a couch and watch people getting shot to shit, and not like this really harrowing drama about the human condition. These films are incredibly moving. They're the movies that made me fall in love with cinema in the first place. These really powerful dramas, and I just love these types of movies. They're not always easy to watch, so I understand that. Hong Kong was released in Hong Kong on July 21st of 1983. It's directed by Clifford Choi, who, interesting side note about him, he's the screenwriter for Snake and Eagle's Shadow, which is a very, very different movie. March 2025. So again, I'm getting to this very late. Like I said, like so many movies are coming out right now, and I get so many requests for the more action-oriented films that it is occasionally difficult to sneak these. What I did with this movie is I didn't even plan a review. I just was like, I really want to watch a Hong Kong movie tonight. I want to watch something more like 80s, 90s, set on the streets, contemporary, like whatever. I saw this on the shelf. It's been highly recommended to me many times. I'd never seen it. The two lead actors are two of my favorite, Sherry Chung and Alex Mann, who you can see right there on the cover. I was like, fuck it, I'm watching it. So the cast, Sherry Chung, Alex Mann, Lo Lei, Kwan Hoi San, great. You'll recognize a lot of the other people in this film. It's a Shaw Brothers movie, actually, but they all went on to do other things or had done other things before. So I think you'll recognize a lot of the cast. Give you a synopsis. So Sherry Chung plays a character from China. She's an undocumented immigrant. She's living in like essentially a slum, and she's living in a house with a lot of other people. There's men and there's women, and the women are doing like kind of hard manual labor day in and day out. And it's a this movie has a very, very frank depiction of sexuality that I think you don't often see in Hong Kong cinema, especially mainstream Hong Kong movies, right? It's not a sexploitation movie. It's a very honest look at sex, at romance, at the way that those things sometimes overlap and sometimes don't. And so this thing happens in this, like, it really is just like a slum, and they're living in this like shack, right? The men will come home after working for like a really long time, and they'll just go up to one of the women and say, do you want to play? Which means you want to have sex. And the women may say like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. It's very blasé, like it's very run of the mill, right? And then they do it basically in the open because there's like little like plywood boards, like, behind these tiny thin curtains where people, like, might sleep together, or, like, they're all sleeping kind of like these bunk beds and on these, in, like, kinda like mats on the floor and stuff like that. And so it's like this very communal way of living with all these young people who are undocumented, who are trying to get ahead or find a kind of permanent situation in Hong Kong, right? Amidst that, the Sherry Chung character, and it should be noted that she was promised a job when she came over from mainland China, but the woman who promised her the job has reneged on the offer because there's too much heat, because the Hong Kong government is cracking down on undocumented migrants from China, arresting them, sending them home. They have people out on the streets asking for documentation, like, "Can you prove that you belong to live here?" and all that stuff, which is, like, very familiar in, 2025. What year is it? 2025 United States, when we have something very similar going on. And so the Alex Mann character is he's half Hong Konger, and he grew up in Southeast Asia. And I apologize for forgetting the details. Does it say on the back where he's from? I think it might be Thailand. Like, I think he might be half Thai, um, and half Hong Konger. And so he's legally allowed to be living in Hong Kong, though he partially grew up somewhere else. And, he's just kinda like this street guy who's just trying to get ahead in life, basically. They run into each other, and they have this kind of interesting relationship where there's, like, a spark and a chemistry there, and yet at the same time, there's, like, they kind of annoy each other, kind of. I mean, it's like classic romantic comedy, right? Like, It Happened One Night and all these, like, Bringing Up Baby, where, like, like, there's chemistry, but they kinda hate each other, but then eventually they realize they're in love with each other, kinda thing, right? Meanwhile, this woman who's a little bit older sees Sherry Chung, like, around the slum, and is like, "Hey, I have a relative who is, like, an older guy. His wife died. He desperately wants children. He's like a carpenter. He's got a steady job. He has an apartment. Like, he might be willing to marry you and, like, help you be able to stay here if you would be willing to help him have kids." It's just and then the plot, and then the Alex Mann character, he gets involved in underground boxing, and then a boxing promoter sees him and starts getting him training and try to promote him in these kind of international fight tournaments, right? So there's an element of, like, Rocky in this movie with, like, the boxer from the streets who's, like, trying to do something with his life and whatever. But it's not as much of a fantasy as Rocky. This is a very grounded, realistic drama that is about people who are kind of, like, outcast by mainstream society, who are living on the fringes. I'm gonna get into my thoughts on this movie now and do my review, but, like, the visual language of this movie is really phenomenal. Like, the opening shot, you see, like, the Hong Kong harbor and all the boats and the skyscrapers, and then it starts to kind of pan and come down, and then you see, like, the slightly smaller buildings and the yet still smaller buildings until we get all the way down onto the street level in the shadow of all this wealth, where we meet these people who are really, really struggling day to day to get by, like living in these slums and these tiny, like, hole in the wall apartments and stuff like that, these very old buildings. There's this really amazing scene where the Sherry Chung character goes to visit the guy who she may be marrying, right? This woman who she meets is like, "Hey, you could maybe marry my distant relative, like a cousin or something." And she's standing on the balcony of this apartment looking down at the street, and she's like, that's not me anymore." But then she turns her head, and there's this massive, much newer building down the street, right? And so this movie does a really good job of using the visual language of cinema to engage its themes, the characters, the world. I also loved how nuanced the characters are. I want to say that Sherry Chung's performance in this movie is a revelation. I love Sherry Chung. I've loved her in a lot of movies. I think she's a very good actor, and not just, like, someone who's easy to look at or someone who's maybe, like, charming and funny, but like she has nuance and presence, and like the way that she inhabits the characters and makes them real on the screen. Like, she's very much, like, not one of these people who just shows up and, like, has an ability to just kind of be charming and likable, right? Like, she actually acts. But this movie is so far beyond anything I had seen from her. Like, this is a phenomenal performance. And one of the things that I loved about it is that this character is really interesting. Like, she's really struggling, you see like there's like this there is an element of the character that is this kind of like idealized young, beautiful, kind of virginal woman as seen from like a perspective of male writers and directors and stuff. But there's an other element of this character where she has a very frank attitude about sex. And like she clearly has done it before. And like it's it can be a mechanical act for her that can just be done in order to do it. And like, she doesn't resent the guys in this slum where she's living for wanting that. And it's like she relates to them and understands them and she doesn't want to be used in a way, but she allows herself to participate in that system at times, but at other times she's like, no, fuck off. I don't want to do that right now. Like she's able to be multiple things simultaneously. She's such a multi-dimensional, nuanced character. And like when she moves in, this is a tiny spoiler, I guess. When she ends up moving into this apartment with this guy who this woman is trying to get her to marry, he buys her like a TV and makeup and stuff. And so there's this interesting thing of like, she thinks that she's making it because she's getting these material things, but they're very small material things in the grand scheme of the great wealth of the world. And she really isn't living in like great conditions and she doesn't have like this great mapped out future and stuff like that. And yet simultaneously, she's aware of that. Like she does love being able to have makeup and to have new clothes and to have a TV and to have her own bed and like to have her own space and time and stuff like that. Um, and she does like she runs into one of her old friends from the slum on the street, and like you can tell that she's proud of the fact that she's like gotten out and that she's doing something. And yet she is also aware that she has not reached the top of the mountain and there's so much more to climb, and maybe she'll never climb there. And like so it's this really interesting multi-dimensional portrayal of like, the scraps that you get thrown in these extremely wealthy capitalist societies, like a little bit of something like with the color television, a place to live and stuff, and you feel like you've really made it. Um, Especially when you come from a place of where you have nothing, and yet at the same time, she has this awareness to know that that's not everything, and that that's not happiness cannot be entirely dependent upon something like that. And so the drama is so good, like the interpersonal drama, the really difficult decisions that these characters have to make, the way that romance is portrayed. This movie is like trying really, really hard. I mentioned Rocky, right? And like Raging Bull is another boxing movie from that era. There's a Scorsese-ness to this film, and that it's trying to get into like the grittiness. Like if you look at a movie like Mean Streets or Taxi Driver, especially, like it's trying to get into these people's lives in a way that is real, right? Almost in the way that like a movie like The 400 Blows is, right? Like it wants to be honest and real as much as it wants to be like an entertaining film. And they're really trying to show you how these people live and who they are in a way that I think is really beautiful and profound and admirable. Obviously amazing locations because you're getting Hong Kong at that time, like unfiltered. Like, I mean, there's a scene where they're like on a boat and they ride out to this like big kind of like tanker type thing. And there's like a makeshift boxing ring in it. There's like a fight going on in there and you could see like the whole harbor and everything. Like, I mean, this is a Hong Kong that doesn't exist anymore from everything that I'm told, right? So to have this footage of that and the preservation of a time and a place is really phenomenal. I mentioned the visual language, the characters, the performance. Alex Mann. I mean, I have said before many times that I think Alex Mann's performance in Rich and Famous and Tragic Hero, like his arc across those two films, is one of the great performances in Hong Kong cinema and one of like the great villain and like action thriller performances of the 80s and 90s of that era. He's phenomenal in this movie. Phenomenal. And again, like Sherry Chung, like he's not necessarily trying to get you to like him or to make his character the most likable person in the world. He's trying to make his character real and relatable. And I think that that's a really powerful and admirable pursuit. And I think he does it very, very well. It's a really sad movie, but again, the nuance is just like, it's so well made. And it's so intelligently put together, and it doesn't allow itself to give into simple things that might make it more entertaining or more obvious. So the limited edition version of this has this very shiny slipcase, which you can see here, which I really like. James Neal is the artist here. Sorry, which I forgot to mention. I'm going to read you the bonus material on here. So this is an HD transfer from the original negative in 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio. It is high definition 1080p Blu-ray presentation. It has the 2.0 Cantonese mono with newly translated English subtitles, audio commentary by journalist David West, Alex Mann on Hong Kong from Fred Ambroisin, who has that huge archive of interviews from across many decades. Has a trailer, stills gallery, reversible sleeve featuring the original Hong Kong artwork. So let me show you. It's 97 minutes long. So you pull it out and you get. I really like this artwork here. I did not reverse the artwork. So there's like fighting in this movie. Like there's some violence in it, and it can be pretty bloody. And like the Alex Mann character at some point is like gambling, so he's like chased by these thugs because he's like winning money from like a gambling house, and they want to get their money back, and there's like some street fighting and stuff. But it's like not at all an action movie, or a fighting movie. Like the fighting is not a huge part of it. It's really a character-driven drama, as you can see here. I moved this into my top 4 on Letterboxd because I was really so blown away by it, and I was really like this and Flaming Brothers. I've said this before. Like there are certain movies that reignite my passion for Hong Kong cinema because I do get burned out a lot doing this channel. It's a lot of like you probably don't see this when you just watch the videos, but it's like a huge amount of work to maintain this channel, the Facebook group, the Instagram, and so I occasionally just get burnt out. And I hadn't watched a Hong Kong movie in like over a month, and I watched this and Flaming Brothers the same week, and it really like reignited my passion for Hong Kong cinema because I loved them both. And then I watched A City on Fire 4K from Shoutfire, so like I'm back in it, baby. I'm loving it. Here's the poster that you get with it, and other side of the poster. So yeah, I mean, like I know we live in tough times, right? Like, and I mean, not to talk about politics because we don't do that here, but I think we can all agree that the world is a bit of a dumpster fire right now. It's a difficult time to be a fan of Hong Kong cinema because of the choices we have to make because of all of these releases that are coming out and the fact that they're all pretty expensive, right? And so I know it's really hard to be like, well, I mean, Hardboiled, I think a lot of people think that Hardboiled is one of the best action movies ever made, if not the best action movie ever made. It's probably one of their favorite movies. Same for The Killer. The A Better Tomorrow trilogy, Shawscope Volume 4 was just announced, which is like, for me, as like a fan of Shaw Black Magic horror films, like I'm so excited about that set. It's hard to know what to buy and hard to pick what to watch. And I understand that. If you like dramas, if you like gritty realism, social realism, going back to shit like Bicycle Thieves, which I just rewatched a couple months ago, which I just gotta be one of the greatest films ever made, like those nitty gritty on the street movies about the struggling, neglected class of people in society, this is an incredible movie. And I can't recommend it highly enough. And so if you have the opportunity, if you can see it, if you can get this release and support the fact that these labels are putting out these dramas so that we can get more of them, if you want things beyond just like the action cinema and stuff like that, I highly recommend that you check this out. My name is Will. You are watching Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.